Israel is currently having the world's biggest temper tantrum. Now, there are many reasons for this. We've seen, of course, the aftermath of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court serving requests for the arrest warrants of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Defence Minister Yoav Gallant for grave crimes against humanity and war crimes. I'll come back to that. But this is a symptom of a wider problem for Israel. Israel's impunity, which it has enjoyed since its foundation, is falling apart in real time. That is, its ability to act as it wishes without consequences, no matter what laws it breaks, no matter what crimes it commits against the Palestinian people. Now, one of the things which has set the Israeli state off is the fact that Ireland, Norway and Spain have recognised the state of Palestine. Let's just have a listen to Simon Harris, the Irish Taoiseach or Prime Minister.
Last month I stood on these same steps with Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain, and we said that the point of recognising the state of Palestine was coming closer. That point has now arrived. Today, Ireland, Norway and Spain are announcing that we recognise the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. In the lead up to today's announcement, I've spoken with a number of other leaders and counterparts, and I'm confident that further countries will join us in taking this important step in the coming weeks. This is an historic and important day for Ireland and for Palestine. On the 21st of January 1919, Ireland asked the world to recognise our right to be an independent state. Our message to the free nations of the world was a plea for international recognition of our independence, emphasising our distinct national identity, our historical struggle, and our right to self-determination and justice. Today, we use the same language to support the recognition of Palestine as a state. We do so because we believe in freedom and justice as the fundamental principles of international law, and because we believe that permanent peace can only be secured upon the basis of the free will of a free people.
Now, of course, we should support this move. Harris there refers to Ireland's history, and as a Brit currently in Dublin, hello, I would note that this is clearly a decision informed by the suffering that Ireland endured at the hands of my country, centuries of colonialism, terror, starvation, until it won its freedom. Well, most of Ireland's freedom, with much struggle and sacrifice, it must be said. Now, this actually brings Ireland, Norway and Spain into the global mainstream, though. 143 of the 193 member states of the United Nations now recognise Palestine as a state. The problem is, of course, that Israel has long rightly calculated that it can defy the wishes of the large majority of the world because it has the support of the United States, its weapons, its aid, its diplomatic support. And given that's the only superpower in town, that's what really counts. It knows the US pays lip service to the idea of a two-state solution, but allows Israel's government to trash any prospect of such a two-state solution. That's why, despite the correct position of the Irish government in recognising the right of the state of Palestine to exist, we should resist attempts to revise history. Now, last night I was on Irish television, The Tonight Show, with an Irish minister belonging to the centre-right Fine Gael party who tried to do just that. Let's have a quick listen.
I mean, there have been very moderate Israeli governments in the past that have really worked towards a two-state solution. I totally agree with you about the Netanyahu government, I think, and indeed, as Oliver has said in Irish Times, it has been one of the most, or I'm paraphrasing, one of the most deeply unhelpful governments that there has ever been in Israel. I think it's important to separate Netanyahu from some of the very moderate, constructive Israeli governments that have been there in the past, and that I certainly would hope to see.
I disagree with that.
Sorry, just finished. And that I certainly would hope to see again. That is exactly the sort of moderates that we hope that they're the only people who can deliver a long-term political solution are moderates.
So you don't believe that the previous Israeli governments would take any issue with declaring recognition of a Palestinian state?
I didn't say. Well, as part of the previous discussions, indeed, from the Oslo Accords, a Palestinian state and the structure to be created around that was one of the things to follow from that. It didn't happen But I'm just saying there's a different historical context than perhaps the one that you.
No, I don't agree. That's historical.
Again.
With all due respect, that's historical revisionism. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't agree with that. With,
well,
with or without respect, I simply don't agree.
Well,
with
okay.
that.
Well, with or without respect, I don't need your respect. But I mean, Shimon Peres is who you're referring to, for example, and he made it clear that a Palestinian state would not be a state; it would be less than a state. Under the so-called moderate Israeli governments you're talking about, that's when the occupation was set up. That's when what is defined by the likes of Israeli human rights organisation B'Tselem or international human rights organisations like Amnesty International, apartheid was set up. And under those so-called moderate governments, I would note, the settlements in the West Bank expanded. Right. And that all happened with the support and complicity or the failure of US governments to take any actions. And that's because those governments knew they could get away with anything. Anyway, these countries breaking ranks does put pressure on the likes of the United States. That's why Israel has lashed out. The state angrily withdrew its ambassadors from those three countries. Its foreign secretary, Israel Katz, who has long opposed the Palestinian state, tweeted out that these nations had undermined Israel's sovereignty and endangered its security, that they sent a message to the world, to the Palestinians and the world, that terrorism pays. Like a gangster, he said, there will be further severe consequences. Well, Israel Katz knows all about terrorism, given the state he represents has been waging a genocidal campaign of terrorism against the Palestinian people, not just in Gaza, but also the West Bank. He's also tweeted out a truly deranged video, complete with willfully cliched Irish music, with a video entitled Hamas Thanks Ireland, with the text, Ireland, if your goal was to reward terrorism by declaring support for a Palestinian state, you've achieved it. Simon Harris, he copied him in, Hamas thanks you for your service. Meanwhile, the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, declared that the Palestinian people must suffer collective punishment because of these countries recognising their statehood. He declared there should be 3 new illegal settlements in the West Bank for every country which recognises Palestinian statehood, while existing illegal settlements should be strengthened and Palestinians' tax revenue should be withheld. Let's be clear. This is the behaviour of a rogue state. All the Israeli state is doing is proving that they are at war with the Palestinian people and have no interest of any description in a lasting just peace. Meanwhile, Israel's online digital army is scraping new lows. The misnamed Twitter account Stop Anti-Semitism, which is not even trying to pretend, frankly, that it isn't conflating anti-Semitism with opposition to Israel's crimes, tweeted out, meet Israel's PM Simon Harris. On October the 7th, Hamas terrorists kidnapped his young daughter Sersha into Gaza. Today, PM Harris announced he is rewarding his daughter's kidnappers with a state of their own. Lunacy, right? Then why are you doing this to Israel? Hashtag what if it was your daughter? I mean, what? Just disgusting rage bait, underlining how depraved Israel's cheerleaders have become. Meanwhile, Israel is lashing out in desperation at the International Criminal Court of Justice's prosecutor Karim Khan and the court staff. Sorry to subject you to this, but let's just listen to Benjamin Netanyahu here.
Through this incendiary decision, Mr. Khan takes his place among the great anti-Semites in modern times. He now stands alongside those infamous German judges who donned their robes and upheld laws that denied the Jewish people their most basic rights and enabled the Nazis to perpetrate the worst crime in history.
Let's be blunt, he sounds like a lunatic. The ICC prosecutor Karim Khan, described by former Executive Director of Human Rights Watch Kenneth Roth as someone who is conservative in his approach and unlikely to bring charges that don't have strong evidence behind them, issued requests for arrest warrants against both Hamas and Israeli leaders. And Netanyahu here says he takes his place, Karim Khan, among the great anti-Semites in modern times, alongside German judges who helped wage Nazi Germany's murderous persecution of ordinary Jewish civilians and paved the way for the Nazis' Holocaust, the systematic and industrialized extermination of the Jewish people. This is the desperation of a man thrashing around desperately because he's banged to rights. He has been held banged to rights on the charges of obscene war crimes and crimes against humanity. There's more documentation for the crimes committed by the Israeli state and the Palestinian people over these last months than almost any other horror committed in human history, thanks, of course, to the combination of modern technology and the courage of Palestinian journalists who the Israeli state have sought to butcher and persecute. Now, Netanyahu also personally responded to the decision of these 3 European nations to recognise the state of Palestine.
הכוונה של מספר מדינות באירופה להכיר במדינה פלסטינית היא פרס לטרור. 80% מהפלסטינים ביהודה ושומרון תומכים בטבח הנורא של ה-7 באוקטובר. לרוע הזה אסור לתת מדינה. זאת תהיה מדינת טרור, היא תנסה לבצע שוב ושוב את הטבח של ה-7 באוקטובר, ולזה לא נסכים. פרס לטרור לא יביא שלום, והוא גם לא יעצור אותנו מלנצח את החמאס.
Well, that's extremely revealing stuff. All Netanyahu is doing here is offering up evidence of his genocidal mentality. What he's discussing here is his belief in collective guilt. Just so you're aware, I'm sure many of you will be, but when he says Judea and Samaria, he's using biblical terminology for what is the West Bank. It's there used on the basis of Israel has the right to these lands, to annex these lands. This is Israel's lands, when of course it isn't. It's the Palestinians' lands. Israeli state has occupied and covered the West Bank in illegal settlements. Now, in the last few months, Israel has waged a campaign of terror against civilians in the West Bank, killing hundreds, including huge numbers of children. Netanyahu's belief in collective guilt here is very important evidence. Collective guilt is always intrinsic to genocide. It is Israel's murderous oppression of the Palestinian people by the Israeli state, of course, which has driven so many to support armed attacks. And if we're going down the polling route, a large majority of Israeli Jewish citizens oppose all humanitarian aid to Gaza, which means genocide by starvation, thirst, and everything else, as well as being evenly divided between Israel having expended too little firepower or just enough firepower, genocidal again, with a large majority supporting Gaza being ethnically cleansed. Now, I say this not because I support collective punishment of the Israeli population. I don't support doing to Israel what Netanyahu has done to Gaza, or indeed what he believes should be done to the Palestinian people as a whole, and nor should you. We need to strive for a peaceful settlement based on the recognition that Israeli Jews and Palestinians are both equal human beings of equal worth who should share the land they both belong to on the basis of justice and equality. That is everything these fanatics hate. Now, what Israel is currently facing up to is the fate of apartheid South Africa. It too faced the growing hostility of a world which became increasingly repulsed by its system of racist domination. It lashed out, it had temper tantrums, it played the victim, and eventually it lost and apartheid was dismissed. This is how this story ends too. This is all heading in one direction only, and the Israeli state knows it. That's why they're lashing out. That's why they're desperate, because they're going to lose. It's only a matter of time. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your comments. Do share. Love to hear your thoughts. Do help us take on the Pro One Media, patreon.com/Jersey4. Listen to the podcast. Speak to you soon.